is you get to kind of play the armchair detective as we go throughout the information. And this is why I know you are going to love today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by June's Journey. June's Journey is a hidden object mystery game set in the 1920s. It is free to download. I am actually super obsessed with this game. I really need time before I go to bed to relax and decompress from the day. And June's Journey has been my go-to lately. It's challenging but still relaxing. This game really lets me relax and escape. As you work your way through this game, you're trying to solve a murder. It's a detective story taking you back to the 1920s, which was such a glamorous time, and you have this really diverse cast of characters that keeps everything interesting. You go through a room and find clues to clear the scene, and once you do, then you're told more of the story. Each time you get a clue, it reveals more of what happened, so you can solve the overall crime. Playing this game is challenging, but also relaxing. It's a great way to put your sense of observation to the test. Go check out June's Journey. There's a link in the description box, and remember, it's free to download, and I just know you guys will love it. So, thank you, June's Journey, for sponsoring this video. Let's get into it. Today's case is an older case. It takes place in October of 1976 in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee. There was a girl named Trenny Gibson. She was 16 years old at the time our story begins. She was getting ready to go on a field trip with her school. Trenny was a junior at Bearden High School, and she was taking a class taught by Wayne Dunlap. The class was planning on taking a field trip to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, but because it was October and the weather was a little bit unpredictable, a lot of people weren't sure if this field trip would actually take place. I'm not sure if this was like a last minute field trip, or if the teacher had told the students, hey, we need to kind of watch and see what the weather does. But either way, most of the students arrived to school on October 8th, kind of unsure as to if this field trip is going to take place or not. So Trenny arrives, and it's a rainy, chilly day. So she's thinking that for sure this field trip is going to be canceled. Although she really did want to go. Trenny was very interested in plants and animals, trees, that type of thing. In fact, she was hoping to be accepted to the University of Tennessee to study landscape architecture. In fact, Trenny had such big plans for her future that she had this part-time job working at a cafeteria, like a food court type of thing, at their local mall, and she was saving all of the money she made so that she could help pay her way through college. Trenny license so she could drive. But overall, she was just very predictable and responsible. So Trenny's mother takes her to school that morning, and she is walking down the hall and she stops a few students to see if the field trip was like a go. When Trenny found out that the field trip would be happening, she took her bag lunch with her, but she left behind her purse and her books so that she wasn't carrying all of this stuff on their field trip, which would be kind of like a hike. Soon, the students began to board the bus and head to the national park. They reportedly were like clapping their hands and cheering as the bus pulled away from the school. Trenny was sharing a seat near the back of the bus with a boy named Robert Simpson, who she knew she was pretty good friends with him. So, Robert was a year older than Trenny in school, and he was really good friends with Trenny's older brother, who had graduated. He had joined the Navy, but he was actually living at home, getting ready to ship out any day when this field trip happened. And Trenny's brother had asked his friend, "Hey, I know you're going on this field trip. Will you keep an eye out for my sister?" The bus finally arrived at the park around noon. It was a 2-hour drive from the school to the park. They parked at the Klingman's Dome parking lot, and Mr. Dunlap told everyone their assignment. So what their assignment on this field trip was to hike to Andrews Bald and back and observe the animals, the plants, and the trees along the way. They were instructed to only observe, not to touch or pick anything up, and they had to stay on the trail. They could not take any side trails or shortcuts. They had to be back at the bus by 3:30 p.m. So, Mr. Dunlap kind of explains the rules to all of the kids, and then he makes them all raise their hand if they understand, and they all did, so he dismissed them. The bus driver stayed in the bus and watched as the students headed up the mountain. Pretty quickly, the large group had they all started out together, but pretty quickly they were breaking off into smaller groups of kids. Some were rushing ahead, others were taking their time, walking slowly. They all had their own lunches, so at various points they were stopping to eat. Everyone was having a great time, just hanging out, laughing, enjoying being outdoors on a school day. Robert had let Trenny wear his brown and orange sat down and had lunch together. Robert wanted to stay and hang out, and by all accounts, everyone was in a really good mood. Everyone was joking around. But Trenny, who kind of thought this field trip wasn't going to happen, wasn't dressed for the weather. It started to rain, and a bunch of people took cover under trees, but she wanted to start hiking back down the mountain. She was cold. She wanted to get to the bus. So she took off back alone without Robert, although she was still wearing his coat. I guess Trenny had an injury. She had somehow punctured her heel. It was healing. She was taking antibiotics. This didn't seem to be causing her any problems. Nobody reported that she was limping or that this injury was holding her back on the hike in any way. Trenny walked back up Forney Creek Trail at a pretty quick pace. She would kind of catch up with groups of students and then walk with them for a bit, but then pass them. My guess is she was just cold and wanted to get back to the bus. The last group of students that would see Trenny said that they kind of stopped for a minute and she was with them. They said, "Hey, you can kind of hang out and rest with us." But she declined and she just kept going. This group of students would be the last people to ever see Trenny Gibson again. They noticed Trenny up ahead of them on the trail, and she kind of stopped and crouched down like she was looking at something off to the right of the trail. Then she stepped off the trail, and she was never seen again. One of the girls in this group that was just behind Trenny actually stopped at the same place where she had seen Trenny step off the trail. But she said there really wasn't anywhere you could go. All there was very thick shrubbery and rocky terrain. This wasn't a side trail. It was just super thick brush. She even called out Trenny's name because she was super confused as to where she went, but she never got an answer and just kind of assumed that that must not have been the area Trenny turned off to. At 3:30 p.m., the group were all back at the bus in the parking lot, and this was when people started to notice that Trenny hadn't made it back. Everyone was asking Robert Simpson, since he had kind of been hanging out with her most of the day, but he was like, "No, she left for the bus without me. I have no idea where she went." Interestingly enough, when it was found out that Trenny was missing and everyone started comparing stories, nobody remembered Robert Simpson walking back down with them. He must have come down completely by himself and no one noticed him in front of them. The students started searching for Trenny right away. So Mr. Dunlap took some students with him to look for her while others stayed at the bus in case she came back. By 4 p.m., Mr. Dunlap had contacted the NPS, which was the National Park Service, to report that they had a lost student at the park. So a ranger responds. It took a half hour for the ranger to respond, so everyone's supposed to be back by 3:30. They search for Trenny till 4. They call the ranger, who shows up at 4:30. He conducts his own search, but he cannot find any trace of her. So then the ranger would call police to make an official missing persons report. The police were called and ground and air searches were initiated. bus driver takes the students back to the school. Mr. Dunlap had stayed to help search for Trenny. At 6:30, there were 19 people who are up at the park searching for her. It wasn't until 8:30 that night that Trenny's mother was even notified that her daughter was missing. So, the school bus didn't get back to the school till about 8:30. This was when the principal was notified, and he let her family know. Trenny's family headed up to the park, and they were told to bring some of Trenny's clothes with them. These were used to give to the canines assisting in the search so they could track her scent. Heavy rains, wind, and fog that night made conditions very difficult for searching. The temperatures were in the low 30s, and the ground was super slippery, and because there was so much foliage, it was really hard to spot anything at all. One searcher slipped and fell and broke several ribs while trying to locate the girl. Helicopters, ground searches, and teams of bloodhounds were all brought in. Now, this search would last until November 1st, when it was called off due to winter conditions. Another search began in April of 1997, but this was a search and recovery versus a search and rescue mission. This second search lasted for the entire month of April. There was never a single trace of Trenny found at the park. But there were some things found during that initial search. Cigarette butts were found along with a partial can of beer at the spot where Trenny stepped off the trail. The dogs that were brought in to search tracked Trenny's scent to the base of Klingman's Dome observation tower and to the shoulder of a paved road 1.6 miles from the dome at Collins Gap. So there's like a parking lot in this area. More cigarette butts were found along the shoulder of this road, and they were the same brand as the ones found where she had left the trail. Several sets of dogs were brought in, and they all tracked her scent to the same area. So, investigators were pretty certain that Trenny had been taken to this parking lot or walked to this parking lot on her own accord, gotten into a car, and was taken out of the park. Trenny's parents, Hope and Robert Gibson, to this day believe that she was forced to leave the park with someone. On October 12th, 1976, the FBI were officially brought in to assist with the investigation. They said there was absolutely no evidence that proves or even really points to the fact that Trenny was kidnapped. The FBI was working on two theories at this time. One had to do with the dogs tracking her scent to the paved road. They said they believed she made it to that road, either against her will or not, but she did leave the park that day. She could have been taken by someone, she could have walked on her own and hitchhiked, but either way, they have no evidence pointing to that she was taken against her will or that she went on her own. The other theory was that Trenny, who was walking ahead of everyone, got lost or got hurt. The FBI began to interview all of the students, and there was a name that came up over and over, and this name was Calvin Bowman. stated as facts in some, like newspapers, and are just rumors in others. So, some of Trenny's things started to show up. Again, I believe these are just rumors. I couldn't find anything where the police stated that these items had been found. One of it was a large comb that Trenny took everywhere. It was like always in her front, like hip pocket. Her mom gave her this comb, her sister had the same one. She always carried it around so she could constantly be fixing her hair. Well, supposedly, this comb was found on the dashboard of Robert Simpson's car. He just happened to have it there. And Trenny's brother was the person who noticed it, and he said, look, she asked me to carry it for her that day when I gave her my coat. The next thing that was rumored to have shown up was Trenny's jewelry. She had a star sapphire pendant and a ring on the day she went missing, and these pieces were reportedly found in the possession of a sophomore at her school. She was questioned about how she got them, to which she never really reportedly had an answer, and the family asked her to give them back, and she said she would. But according to the family, these items were never returned. So, like I said, there's definitely some conflicting information out there. This is an older case. It wasn't reported on like cases now, so I don't know if any of these things were actually found or if they were just rumors. So let's talk about Calvin, who was not on the field trip as a student that day. So, in October of 1975, Calvin Bowman had broken into the Gibsons' home. I guess Hope, who was Trenny's mother, ended up shooting him in the foot during this break-in, and he was arrested for breaking and entering, and he had to spend time at a juvenile facility. Although he was sentenced to 2 years, he was let out after 6 months, and he was back attending school with Trenny when the field trip happened. However, one of the reasons why a lot of people believe he was involved was because when he was sentenced, he made threats in the courtroom that he would get revenge against the Gibson family, and he named Trenny in particular, saying when he was released, he would hurt her. Police looked into the possibility that Calvin had in fact followed the bus to the park, but Frank Hall, who was the principal of the school, swore up and down that Calvin had never left the school that day. He had attended all of his classes. So this basically alibied Calvin. Police also had to look at the possibility that Trenny had just run away. So this seemed very unlikely, and here are a few of the reasons. She hadn't packed anything. In fact, when she found out the field trip was happening, she left her purse and books behind instead of taking them. Her purse, her bank book, her clothes, and her makeup were all left behind. And she had over $1,000 in her bank account that was never touched. Her bank account was never accessed after she went missing. Another really weird thing, I feel like there's so stabbed, and her body could be found at the point where Abrams Creek meets West Brom. However, these two rivers, they never meet, like they are miles apart. So police don't really know what to make of this tip because it just doesn't make any sense. They knew the caller was a man, but other than that, they had nothing to go on. The Gibson family would end up suing the city of Knoxville, the school, the principal, and the teacher. However, this lawsuit was dismissed. Trenny was last seen at approximately 3 p.m. on October 8th, 1976, in the Great Snowy Mountains National Park. She was wearing a blue shirt, a pastel blue striped sweater, blue jeans, and blue Adidas shoes. She had long brown hair and was wearing a brown and orange plaid wool jacket. She has green eyes and was 5'3" and 115 pounds when she went missing. If you have any information about the disappearance of Trenny Gibson, please call the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation at 615-744-4000. You guys, I do not know what to think about this case. And this is why, like, camping and spending time in nature freaks me out. I just feel so much more safe in, like, a big city, even if there's crime. Actually, I can't say that. I've never lived anywhere where there's, like, a large amount of crime, but I get so nervous being out in the wilderness. This case reminds me of the missing 411, which I will leave a link up above if you have not watched that case, where there's just all of these unexplained cases of people just vanishing in national parks. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to quickly cite my sources for this video. I found 2 blogs that had like super in-depth information on this case. Investigations of the Missing had an article titled Gone in the Smoky Mountains, and a website called CanadianGirl77.com. Please check those out if you would like